Okay, so I'm really happy to introduce Lucas Lai, my co-writer, best friend. And I just wanted to ask you some questions about the film and our process in writing this, just so that we can share, with people a little bit about the story and why it's important to us.
I don't like this lighting. I don't like this lighting.
Wait, this is Danny Lai. So I'm gonna try this intro again. So I'm very happy to introduce Lucas Lai, my co-writer for Laundromat and my best friend. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit today about the process of writing the short film and what it means to you and what it means to us and what we're hoping to, do with it. So the first question I actually wanted to ask you is not on the prompt that I gave you. A little surprise question is, could you tell us a little bit about your immigration story?
I mean, as you know, a very unorthodox immigration story because I came to the United States in 1989 for summer vacation, is what I was told, and to visit my grandparents, which was true. We came for summer vacation to visit my grandparents, who had moved to upstate New York to live with my aunt and uncle. And then we just stayed and didn't go back. The house next door went on sale. We bought that house and moved in, and I started first grade that fall and didn't go back to Taiwan for another like 10 years or something like that. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I think in that aspect, it's like very a shared experience. Like I also came here on a tourist visa and then, stayed.
Yeah.
Um, so
Well, but and I think it is still very different though, in that, like, not to compare necessarily, but like, we came legally, and so I was never in a position where I felt like, oh, this is my situation is precarious here.
mhm,
Like my dad had all the visas and we had everything worked out so that we were here legally from the beginning.
mhm,
Um, so I think in this story, that is part of also what's being contrasted here is,
mhm.
and I think through the characters, the I mean, it's unspoken kind of that, Danny doesn't have any anxiety about his being here, even though he's an immigrant, you
Yeah,
know?
I think that's a really beautiful contrast, and it's very subtle. It's this idea that there are many immigration stories, like people come to America in many different ways. And I think the experience that you have is completely, connected to that, but it doesn't mean that there aren't some shared elements, that there aren't some common thread. And I think that's another thing that we were trying to, when we started talking about the film and talking about the story, just that element, like bringing together things that would really transcend like legal status or transcend immigration status in this country. And that was community, friendship, love. Um,
Mhm.
so can we talk a little bit about that? I think that was a really big aha moment when you were talking about the how were we going to tell this story and like not make it so like a public service announcement, but make it, more of a film.
Yeah, I think for me, because as we know, the story evolved a lot in the writing process. And the reason why I came on really was because you had shared the very first version of the script. I read it. I, of course, gave you my unsolicited opinion about the ending. And I really was just like, I'm not sure about this ending. I don't really like this ending.
Mhm.
And then you being you were like, well, what would you write? And then that kind of just got my head thinking about, what would I write? And then the story really evolved, and for me has always been about not downplaying, of course, the tragedy of being deported and for the people that are being deported, but more like trying to also really paint a picture about how no matter your legal status, when you are anywhere, you're part of a community. So when those people are removed, it's not only their life that's shattered, but also the community that which they belong is also now fractured.
Hmm.
And in this story, it's really about the fact that this is a fracture that happens for both, Joe and Danny.
Hmm.
Danny now is going to live the rest of his life having had this traumatic event happen to him as a kid that has nothing to do with him, really. He has no control over this. It just, it's an unexplained kind of something happens to his friend, basically, right?
Hmm.
Um, and I think for me, that was really important to express because I think we often forget about that part, that these people, all the people who are here are parts of communities, no matter what their legal status. And when they're removed, it's not just them that gets affected by it, is really the point of the story.
Yeah, I think, the humanistic approach to this was definitely to focus, and I think that was kind of like our guiding element. It's like focus on the friendship, focus on the community, focus on what gets destroyed essentially when something like this happens. So, a lot of it was maybe for me like writing from a place of like, okay, John and Lucas, 7 years old, like knowing, this 20-year friendship that we have, and then like what would it feel like to to like have either one of us torn out of each other's lives like that. So I think being able to tell that and from the perspective of a kid, I think is what makes this story really special, and I mean, there are all these horrible things happening at the border with children, and you know, immigration is such a hot topic in this country. But what I think, the more than just being a topic, I think it's important to just focus on the human side of it, like what happens to people, like what does it feel like, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think for me, when thinking about the story, it was all about like build world building to be able to, in a short span of time, how do we show this bond that exists, and we don't know how long they've been friends. Maybe they've been friends for ever since they were like babies, they could have really grown up together to the point where they're almost like brothers. And to have something like that happen to you at such a tender age is it's just so devastating. And I think for me, as someone that is what has always been here legally, it was very challenging in all the right ways for me to imagine this kind of thing happening, you know,
Mhm.
to me if I were a child,
Mhm.
or when I was a child, if something like that happened to me, how would that affect me, for forever, really, you
Mhm.
know?
All right, last question. Now we're, very close to production, and we're going to start shooting this film. We've cast Danny, we've cast Joe, we've cast Lena. What are you most excited about, for this next production step?
I think when you work on a creative project, you know, it just lives in your head for so long that it's so exciting to be able to, I just can't wait to see it happen, like in terms of first the onset reality of everything, but then knowing that after all that, there's the editing and the layering of so many elements, the music. Um, so yeah, I think for me, it's the most exciting is to see how this moves from an idea that's been incubating for years into a reality that hopefully really speaks to people and really gets people to think about these issues, at the end of the day. I think that's what's most exciting for me.
Yeah, for me too. It's like just seeing their little faces. Like when I saw them, like when we started watching the audition tapes, and it was so magical to just see these kids bring these characters to life and all their mannerisms and all of those things. So I'm
Yeah, I
really
think for me also, as we know, so many of our friends have children now, and there's something so magical about spending time with these kids at, various ages, and some of them the ages of Joe and Danny, that I guess for me, it's also really exciting to just inhabit a space in the film that's about childhood, as such a sacred time in one's life. Yeah.
all right. I'm gonna keep it short because I want to post this
Okay.
on social. So, have a good day. I love you, and
Yeah.
bye, girl.
Bye.
Bye.